What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Sports Talk on Tap podcast. We're here. You can find daily videos Monday through Friday covering all the four major sports leagues, whether it be NFL, MLB, NHL, or NBA, games, highlights, news, tier lists, all that fun stuff. In today's episode, Nick, once again, we're going to be back at it with an NFL team. We did kind of take a break from that yesterday. If anyone wants to go check out our NIL video, hasn't become too powerful, make sure to check that one out. Thought that was a good discussion. But in today's video, kind of back, kind of going through all 32 teams as the Chiefs have already reported to training camp because they're in the Hall of Fame game. So some exciting stuff now. Football is kind of officially back underway for some teams, and just kind of we're getting towards that part of the season where we can just smell it. But in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that a lot of people heading into last season after Brady retired, they finished below 500, still snuck into the playoffs, but got destroyed by the Cowboys. It was just kind of a year of, Baker's going to come in, be a bridge, kind of, we're going to regress probably 4-win team, and, kind of everyone will be on their way. But, Nick, this Tampa Bay team was the opposite of that. They stayed when I remember week 1 against my Vikings, went in there, beat them in a close game, and they kind of took off the rest of the season. They had a solid season overall, regular season wise, 9-8, with some memorable games. Even though they lost that game, the game against the Texans was arguably game of the year. That game was just back and forth. Mm-hmm. Amazing football. CJ Stroud's best game of his career, but that was really fun to watch. But Baker Mayfield and this offense really, Baker Mayfield especially just had a career season, took off under Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator. Todd Bowles, that defense remained very solid. And this team won the NFC South, 9 wins. With some big wins, over the Saints in the regular season, and just, a couple, just they took advantage of the weak division and they went into the playoffs, and then probably their most memorable game was the playoffs. And that's a good thing to have, a memorable game there, as they destroyed the Philadelphia Eagles, who were kind of streaking going in, but even myself included, looking back, I still picked the Eagles just because, the year before they just went to the Super Bowl, were inches away, and even though they were struggling, it felt like maybe a get-right game against a Tampa Bay team. People still weren't sold on, but the Buccaneers destroyed them. Baker Mayfield played well. Mike Evans lit them up. Chris Godwin. And then they went into Detroit, put up a great fight. I actually did pick them that week because they didn't want me to doubt Baker Mayfield again. And they almost won it. It was I believe a 7-point game, but in the end, the Lions defense made one stop on Baker to kind of, put them up over the edge. But realistically, Nick, this Tampa Bay team was maybe 1 or 2 bounces away from going to the NFC Championship game. And then who the hell knows what happens against them and the 49ers. And then, Super Bowl if they win that. So, there's a lot of interesting. Was on the verge of an NFC Championship game last year. And now, what they do? They kind of just re-signed all their players. Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield got that 3-year, $100 million contract. That kind of, he had a prove it year. He did it. But now, like we said in the title, he has to prove that he's worth it now. And my question to you is, will he prove it? And what do you think the expectations are for Tampa Bay after the season they just had?
I think last year when he went to Tampa, you could argue that was the best situation he's been in since he's been in the NFL. I know in Cleveland they got him Odell, but that Odell seemed like a shell of himself from New York, and Jarvis Landry wasn't the same as he was. Oh, yeah. That Browns team just didn't click, and so then.
But even then, people forget. Sorry to interrupt you. People forget that team won 11 games and almost beat the Chiefs. Even at best weapons, they had the running game. They had a solid team. That went to the divisional round.
No, yeah, that. I'm not trying to take away from that team because that Browns team, I feel like as a whole was a pretty good team, but just. Oh yeah. I just want to think. I just think this Tampa Bay offense kind of suits Baker more. He went to Carolina, that was a disaster. He went to the Rams for a few games and kind of proved he could still play in the league. He might have saved his career with that crazy Thursday night football game where he learned the playbook on the way to the game pretty much. And then
a Josh Dobbs situation of last year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think he will prove it. I think getting Mike Evans back for him is ginormous because, obviously, Mike Evans is one of the Could be, he might be in the argument for like most underrated receiver all time because 10 straight 1,000-yard years. I think he's one of 3 receivers to do that, and I just like where the Bucs are. The division is not super competitive at the moment, which is kind of what you want. Like the Bucs don't need to have some super stacked team where you're buying players left and right just to stay in the division race. Like they kind of just need to be ahead of the pack. And once you get into the playoffs, you never know what happens. Like you just said, they almost beat the Lions in Detroit, and that would have sent them to the NFC Championship. And you never know what happens there. But I
Yeah.
think prove it. Excuse me. He played in a bunch of big games last year. That Green Bay game in Green Bay, where he was the first ever away quarterback to have a perfect passer rating there. Just games like that kind of showed me that he still has it, and as long as he's surrounded by the right people, he can play right. Just those situations he was in before just weren't good for him, and so people were kind of slandering his name, hating on him, telling him he sucks and all that. But I'm a fan of Baker. I like the way he plays. I like the dog mentality he kind of has, where he's pounding his chest and running through guys, trying to gain first downs, getting in people's faces. I like that kind of stuff. So I root for him. I hope the Bucs do good because I have personal ties to the Bucs with Tom Brady going there. So
Yeah.
they're kind of like a team I on the side have to root for. So I want to hear what you think because I do think he's going to prove it. I think he's going to show that he belongs
Yeah.
in this league.
I think Baker has proven he does belong in this league when he's given the right system. And some decent complementary pieces, he can make it work, and he's proven to be a top 15 point quarterback. When he has the right pieces, and last year arguably top 10 the way he played. My only concern is how much better can he get, and how much better can this team get, because they didn't really bring in any like new names, like new pieces. They didn't really need to, like you said, though. They still have a really solid team. Vita Vea leading that front seven. And you still have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rashad White in the backfield. But how much better can this team get to take that next step? Because really they're kind of relying on maybe just more continuity with Baker in this offense. But even then, you lose Dave Canales, who was a surprise hire. But, you have to get a new offensive coordinator in. So how much will the system be similar is kind of one challenge, I think. And just the other one is this team won 9 games last year. But I feel like the Falcons got better, so they're not going to be 2 easy wins. I think they might end up, splitting, or, wouldn't surprise me if Kirk Cousins is healthy, if Atlanta could win both of those. So just kind of that, and tougher schedule because you are playing a first place schedule now, even though they were last year, despite only winning 8 games the year before. So you're still on that first place schedule. I'm interested and see what they can do, but I'd probably have them pinned around 8 to 9 wins again. I think Baker can perform. It's just, I don't know if the team as a whole is just, I think, probably good. If Baker Mayfield plays well, I think they're good. So, kind of around that 9 wins, just because it is a super competitive NFC where there's a lot of good teams coming up, like the Packers, the Lions, the Niners are still there, the Eagles, the Cowboys. The Falcons are now trying to make a push to win that division. And, people like us have kind of overrode the Saints, but, they were a 9-win team last year, so they're kind of no easy out. So it's just going to be tough for them to, kind of get back. But, there's also a possibility, like I said, like if they build continuity with each other and it's just that year 2, more of the system, Baker gets even slightly more better in this team. Mike Evans, we know what he does if Chris Godwin could stay healthy. And this defense with Todd Bowles, who is a really solid defensive mind, finishes around the top 10, then maybe this team could win 10, 11 games. So there's all those kind of possibilities. But I'd kind of pin them to finish around the same records they did last year, and just kind of, will that be enough to get them into the playoffs? Because I have Atlanta winning probably like 10 games. So I don't know if they do get one of those last wild card spots. But, we'll see. It's very possible. A lot of things can happen.
You do make the point. I think Atlanta is going to be the team that competes with them. Like, just because I know you're, expecting a Bryce Young kind of bounce back year, and maybe he does it. Maybe they win, 5, 6, or even 7 games and are sneaking around that wild card. But I just think those 2 teams, Atlanta and Tampa, are just they're more ready to win now, which is gonna. But in the NFC, it is very competitive, so it's gonna be tough. It's always tough to win football games. You hear from players literally all the time how it's tough to win every single week, no matter who you play. But I'm excited. I liked seeing Baker in Tampa last year. It seemed right after the Brady era. I know they were kind of nervous. They were thinking, we might be, in contention for a first overall pick after Brady because he really
that was the thoughts going into the year. But I always had my background they still have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. That defense is kind of brought back.
Yeah.
Is this team really gonna be that bad? And Baker Mayfield basically played last season, just kind of took care of the football and probably slightly even better. And that's why they won. They won one more game and were really competitive. So kudos to them.
Yep.
This team won't fall off the tracks. They won't be like a 4-win team.
Right.
But my trouble with them is how much can they really get better? Because I feel like with their roster, they're a solid 8-9 win team. It's just kind of after that though, do they have the pieces to get over that hump? Can they go on the road and win 3 playoff? That's kind of a question I feel like will have to be answered. But I'm curious to see because Baker Mayfield got paid. Maybe he's playing a little bit more loose, but that could be a good thing or a bad thing because maybe he's not taking care of the football quite as much. But he also has shown the talent where he can do it. So it is going to be a very interesting year. I think the Buccaneers, for me, are kind of like a fringe playoff team. I think when we did our first round of, predictions, I had them missing out. I think you as well. But, we'll come back to that, before the start of the regular season and redo it. But
yeah, I think I had them missing the playoffs too. It's
going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. For sure.
Yeah, but with that being said, should be very interesting. Tampa Bay, obviously, coming off the Super Bowl 3 seasons ago, they kind of, I think it shows how good of a foundation they have with the coaching change from Bruce Arians to Todd Bowles, from quarterback change from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield. They have a solid foundation in place to always remain competitive, and it will be very interesting. I'm excited to see. And like you said, I 100% agree with Baker Mayfield. I like his badass trash. He's not afraid to let it out. A nice personality. And, he's been through a lot on and off the field. So just good to see him, get rewarded for his hard work and, controversy going through the league.
Yep. Glad to see him doing well.
Yeah. And like you said, for you, it's the Brady connection. For me, I don't really care as long as they don't beat the Vikings. But, with that being said, should be a very interesting division next year. And the Buccaneers will be right in that mix. When we do our round 2 of playoff predictions, maybe I might throw them in there. Maybe you might. We'll see how we're feeling as we gear towards more of the beginning of the regular season. But with that being said, let us know in the comments, guys, what you guys think. Will Tampa Bay, continue to progress, or will they kind of take a step back? Do you think this Baker Mayfield contract was deserved? We're always curious to get your guys' thoughts. But make sure to like and subscribe, as always, if you enjoy this kind of content, and we'll catch you next one. Peace.